Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and give us about a minute here while people filter in. We'll get started at about 3:01. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Jen O'Brien and I work with Hawks Learning. And today I'm going to give you an overview of the student software. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box. I'll do my best at the end to stay on and address any questions that you do have. So what we're looking at right now is the student dashboard. This is what they will see once they log into the software. I'll make a quick mention of a few items at the top of the page before we really dive into the majority of the student content, which is the lessons that they work through. So at the top of the page, you'll see students can easily navigate to their grades. They also have access to an ebook. The ebook is something that is completely free with the purchase of our software, so students should always have access to that. Under discussions, you'll see the option for live chat and discussion board. These are instructor-initiated tools to communicate with your students outside of the classroom. To the right of that, we have our alert notification bell. This is simply going to bring the students' attention to high priority assignments. Anything due today, any assignments that might be overdue as well. Next to that, we have our messaging tool. So this allows you and your students to communicate as though you're emailing with each other. You and your students do both have the options to have these forwarded to your personal emails or school emails as well. Now, as an instructor, we do have an optional tool called automatic reminders, which would allow you to essentially set it up at the beginning of the semester. Then your students would receive what looks like a really personalized message from you directly anytime an assignment is about to be due or is past due, if they've not yet completed it. And it actually customizes and pulls a specific lesson name, and you choose what period of time you want this sent out to your students. 2 days before an assignment is due, 1 day after it's past due, and so forth. And then to the right of that, you'll see a few additional items. Live tutoring. So for new student accounts, we do give about 1 hour's worth of credit to Wisant tutoring that they can access by clicking straight through here. We also, of course, link students to the option to access our live support. Now, as most of you might know already, support is something we put an enormous emphasis on here at Hawks. So if you or your students ever have any questions, you can pick up a phone, give us a call. Our company policy is we answer the phone within 4 rings. That's the same for students and for instructors. And that's until 10 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. We have some hours on Sunday at the beginning of the term. But outside of that, we also offer 24/7 live chat support. This is also extremely prompt. Our average response rate is less than a minute. So if you or your students need us, we are here to help you. And then below that, I did want to mention one other thing. We have a give feedback, win prizes option. We really do encourage students to provide any feedback that they have for us about our software system. You know, being a company that puts so much emphasis on the support we provide, it also means that really everything we do is driven by feedback we're getting from students and instructors. So to encourage feedback from students, we actually randomly draw 5 students who receive a gift card from us each month for having provided that feedback. So that brings us to the bulk of the student experience, as I mentioned, which is them actually working through the content you've assigned to them. I will see any courses I'm enrolled into here on my dashboard. And I will also see an overview of some upcoming assignments. So on this mini to-do list, I see what's due today, I see what's due this week, and then a snapshot of a few upcoming assignments. All you really have to do as an instructor is put a due date next to a lesson, and that's how they show up here for your students. That being said, you do have many customization options, and I will try to touch on those as we go through. I will go ahead and click on View Course in order to open up my comprehensive student to-do list. This is where, as a student, I can see everything that's assigned for me for the entire semester, if you choose for it to display that way. This will include my Hawks homework lessons. This will include any online assessments you're assigning to students. It would also include any offline assignments if you want to keep track of those here for your students as well. I will go ahead and click directly into a lesson. So every Hawks lesson matches a section in the textbook, and we always present the content in this 3-mode learning path: learn, practice, and certify. Learn and practice are really designed to prepare the students before they go on to certify, which is the graded homework component of the assignment. So I'll go ahead and jump into each of these so that you have access, or so you can see what students have access to within each mode. So learn, you can think of really as just all of the instructional content they need for this particular homework assignment. So I'm in lesson 4.1 right now. That means everything I'm looking at here is the same textbook content as what I would see in the ebook and the textbook. Benefit being, because it's in Learn, we've pulled just that lesson's content and put it on the same exact page as the homework. So we're hoping that makes it a little easier for students to jump in there and get what they need. Another benefit of presenting this in the Learn mode is that we can embed videos. So as the students work through the materials, they will see an extensive number of example level videos. So this will be an example that is identical to something they will see on this page, but this way they can watch an instructor actually working through the problem and explaining the process of how to solve it. In addition to the example level videos, I will also always have access as a student to the lesson level videos. So if I click that watch button in the top left-hand corner, it opens up this box where I can play a lesson level video. This will just be an overview of key content from this particular section. We do also provide students with a link to our Hawks TV website. So should they want to access videos from another title, maybe a lower level title to review some remedial topics, they are certainly free to access that. It is open resource and free for anyone to jump in there. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention in the Learn mode is relating to the customization options I mentioned you have available in Hawks. So one of your customization options in Learn is to actually add instructional content to any page that you wish. So what we're looking at here, at the top of the screen, you'll see I can scroll and see all of the Hawks content, but below that there's a split screen and I see a note has been added. So this down here is the instructor added note. So this could be something as simple as you just typing a quick message saying, make sure to pay attention to this example. It will be something similar will be on the upcoming exam. Or you could be a little bit more involved. Perhaps you have some additional teaching resources you want to embed. You can embed videos, images, links to websites, and even some interactives in there if you've got a website that you like to go to for that, such as GeoGebra. Now, in addition to having the option to add a note, you also have the option to hide a screen entirely. So let's say maybe you're only covering half of a section. Go ahead and hide the rest of those Learn screens. That way you don't have to worry about students spending time on something that's not relevant for the particular class. Your third option would be to replace a screen entirely with your own content. So for this particular example, that would mean I don't want students to see anything at the top. I don't want any Hawks content on this page. I want to take over the entire page with the content I've built. So my Learn screen note would become the full page. This would be nice if, for instance, maybe you take a different approach to teaching something. Maybe you want to present a different example or something like that. You can always use that option. With that being said, I will go ahead and log into the next mode, which is practice. And practice is just as it sounds. It really is where students should go to prepare and practice before Certify. It's where they will go to get a lot of extra help and feedback and assistance while they're learning this content. So part of that would be, let's say I get to a question and I'm struggling. I don't know how to solve this. I can always come down in the bottom left-hand corner and click Tutor. This will open up an option that will provide step-by-step instruction. Sometimes it'll be a hint depending on the discipline and the topics, but step-by-step for math is going to take the exact question I was struggling with, not a similar version. It's not different numbers. It's the same exact numbers, the same exact question. And it then breaks it down one step at a time, explaining the process of how to solve it while prompting me to put in the answer one piece at a time as well. If I'm still struggling and maybe I want some extra guidance, I can even click display step answer as I move on to the next step. This is just nice because it is such an interactive way to get students working through a problem, getting a lot of assistance, the type of feedback and help that you might try to give as well as an instructor if you were working with a student. But in today's online environment and distant learning environment, it's nice to have something like this built in to help with the exact problems they're struggling with. To the right of step-by-step, I've got Learn. This is nice because let's say, maybe a student doesn't jump into Learn before practice, but once in practice, they start realizing they're not really as confident in this material as they thought they were. They could jump through, read whatever they want and Learn. They can even navigate to a specific topic and Learn, and not lose their place within the practice mode. And then further to the right is Solution. Now, similar to step-by-step, it is going to be the exact version of the problem that I struggled with, not a similar example, which again, I feel like there's a lot of value to that because, for some of these math problems, a student's going to have to work out some of this on a piece of paper with a pencil. And now I can actually take my scrap piece of paper, compare it to the computer screen and figure out where I went wrong with this particular problem that I was struggling with. And the reason we can help with the exact problem and not just a similar version is because we're doing this in practice. It's not the graded homework component. So that's where we really differ from a lot of these other online homework systems. Okay, back to practice. I also have the option to click Try Similar. So if you look in the bottom right-hand corner here where my mouse is, if I click Try Similar, it will show me the same question type, just new values. And I can come in here and work through as many of these as I want to. We do try to have a large number of versions of questions, so students really do have ample practice questions to work through. Now let me go ahead and show you the type of feedback a student would see if they are going ahead and answering a question. So for this question, I will scroll down here and I will use my keypad in order to put in a special character. I will also use my keyboard to type in here. I'll click Submit. And right away, just like with any online system, it's going to tell the student if they're right or wrong. So right away, I can tell I got the question wrong. What's different about Hawks is we take it a step further and try to identify for the student why they got that question wrong. So we do our very best to anticipate and diagnose any common mistake a student might make. That way we can point it out to them, tell them specifically so they can learn from that mistake. So for this particular example, I'll scroll down a little bit and show you the error specific feedback is down here. So not only is it going to tell me I'm incorrect, it goes on to say, it appears you have confused the definitions of domain and range because the values you have entered are reversed. You entered the values of the range in the blanks for the domain and vice versa. So now as a student, there's no question. I know exactly what I did wrong. I can learn from this mistake, go back and fix it. We really do consider this one of the most critical parts in the learning process. That moment the student's struggling and incorrectly answering a question, we want to make sure we can intervene and help those students specifically with that mistake. Again, our goal really is to try to give the type of feedback you might give as an instructor if you did have the time to sit down with every student on every problem that they are working through. And then to the right of explain error, should I need some additional assistance, they'll see that additional tutoring support with a hint, learn, and solution. that's pretty much everything I wanted to show you in the practice mode. So I will go ahead and exit out of practice and move on to Certify. Now, as an instructor, you can require practice. You have that option in your curriculum so that students, either before they attempt to certify or after a certain number of attempts to certify, they must work through a % of the practice questions. But now we move on to the last mode, which is Certify. One quick note also in terms of customization for both practice and certify is you as an instructor can also hand pick the exact questions a student will see in these two modes. We pick it by default, so you don't have to build anything from scratch, but by all means, if you want to customize it, you can do that. Okay, so on to Certify. This is the graded homework component of the course. I already mentioned that before, but we really do handle it pretty differently compared to what you might be familiar with other online homework systems. And the goal is to help your students out. We want to help your students learn and retain this content. And so what I'm about to walk through now with you will be some helpful tips that you can even pass on to your students if you want in the classroom. So first thing we do is we remove the learning aids. You'll see at the bottom of the screen, I no longer have a tutor. I can't click skip, try similar. We really want to make sure that at this point in its low stakes environment, just a homework assignment, that students are able to demonstrate not just to you, but also to themselves that they know how to solve these problems on their own without outside help. Anytime there is help available in a homework mode, it's so easy, whether a student realizes it or not, it's so easy for them to become overly reliant on that learning aid. I get to the first question, I don't know how to solve it because I haven't worked on it before. My first time practicing is homework with another system. So I click a help me solve it or try similar, maybe a tutor button. I mimic steps, I shoot and guess, finally get the question right. I can go through that process and eventually get every question correct one time. Perfect score on the homework assignment, but I've missed so many questions in between and I relied so heavily on those learning aids that I wouldn't have any idea how to solve those problems on my own if I sat down even moments later to do it. So we want to avoid that scenario and make sure homework is adequately preparing students for that actual testing environment. Second key thing we do is we make it mastery based. So by default, we always set the mastery level at 80%. That means students are demonstrating a solid understanding of this content. You as an instructor can always change that. But for this case, that means I've got 20 questions I'm allowed to get. In the top right-hand corner, I see I can get 4 wrong to reach that mastery level. But what happens if, as a student, I don't reach mastery? There's no penalty. We simply, as soon as they get over 20% wrong, so as soon as in this scenario I get a 5th question wrong, we take the students out of Certify, we place them directly back into practice, where we then give students a custom set of practice questions based on what they got wrong in the homework assignment. So each of your students will get adaptive remediation to help them really work on and remediate those question types that they're struggling with the most. Keep in mind when they are in practice, they have that explain error feedback, they have that tutor that walks them through how to solve things. They can then come back into Certify once they're comfortable and confident and ready as many times as they want to. This is a really important component. We never block the students out. We want to make sure they have unlimited attempts to try it. And as a motivation factor, as soon as the student does reach that 80% mastery level, once they come back to Certify and try again, as soon as they reach it, no matter how many attempts it took, we give them 100% credit for having demonstrated competency. We don't want to dock off points per question wrong. We don't want to penalize this experience. We really just want to motivate students to keep working on this until they understand it. That's the whole purpose of homework, for students to make mistakes, learn from it, correct it, because that's what's in the end going to prepare them and help them come actual exam time and retain the information for future courses. That's everything I wanted to cover here. There's one last feature I wanted to briefly mention. It's completely optional for your students. And after that, I will address any questions that you might have. So again, please feel free to type into the question and answer box if you do have questions for me. But under the web test tab, students will always have access to this practice web tests tool where they can create their own practice web test. So this is nice because, if you do have a student saying, hey, I would like to get a little extra practice before the upcoming exam, do you have any suggestions on what I can work on? tell your students to come in here. You don't have to create something from scratch from them. They choose what topics to include. They choose the time parameter. So maybe they want to mimic what they know their testing restriction will be in an actual exam. Then they start their exam. Now, what's nice about this is that the exam is going to be the same exact interface as what a instructor created exam would be. So once they actually get to this portion where they're taking the exam, this part looks the same as an instructor created exam. So that's a really good way to encourage your students to come in here and actually try creating a practice test. That's only going to prepare them if they're getting a little extra help. And it will help them not only by practicing the questions, but also being familiar with that testing environment. Then at the end, they receive extremely helpful feedback. The review button will let them see exact questions they got wrong. On those wrong questions, they'll see the explain error feedback and full solution, like what I showed you in practice. But they also see at the bottom here a breakdown of their performance on a per lesson basis. So now as a student, I can see where I'm struggling. Gray are the questions I skipped. Hopefully your students see a lot of green, which would be correct answers. But if they see a lot of red in a lesson or two, that's going to help that student prioritize their study time. They can even use this as an interactive study tool by clicking on a particular lesson. It opens up a practice session for them to get remediation on those topics, and I can work through it that way. So again, this is not only going to help students get extra practice by working on the practice test, see where they're struggling with the breakdown of their performance, but it also helps them get some extra remediation as they are preparing in your class. So that's everything I had to cover today. Let me see if there are any questions. So far, no questions have come through, but by all means, if you do have any questions whatsoever, please do let us know. Some of you might be aware already, but next week, starting next week, we are hosting several live student trainings. I think we're doing at least around 3 each week for the next couple of weeks. This is something you can actually forward to your students to sign up. So they'd be registering for the webinar, just like you're registering for this webinar, and they would attend a live session. A Hawks representative would walk them through a lot of these different features and benefits in the software, like I've done today for you. And they would also then be available to answer any questions for the student live as well. So somebody here has asked a question. They said, if I calibrated a homework assignment to be 20 points, are you saying that if a student earns 84% or 96%, then the student will have posted a grade of 20 points? Will I be able to see their different percentages? So good question. And yes, the way it works is rather than being a more traditional assignment where a student is getting their exact grade that, whatever the point value would be, we still have quizzes and tests where you can do that. We instead take this approach where we say, listen, we just want you to work on this without any outside help, which is usually a bit more rigorous than other online homework systems. But as a motivation or reward in the end for that extra effort, we will give you that 100% credit. So it's more of a completion grade for demonstrating mastery without outside help. You as an instructor, however, do have the ability to review any Certify assignment. So you could really easily open up a Certify assignment and see the exact questions each student gets correct and incorrect in that assignment. Answered live. Okay, I believe that's all. I don't see any other questions coming through. So one other question here. When a student is missing 3 assignments and are late, how many messages will they receive? 1 for each assignment. Good question. So let's say, so this is relating to when I was talking about those automated reminders in the top right-hand corner here. I mentioned instructors can set up an automatic reminder. The way those automatic reminders work is they basically go by assignment type and due date. So if you have it set up to say, I want to send an automatic message 1 day after any homework lesson, so these Certify lessons are late. If you have 3 assignments due on a Friday and a student completed one of them but missed the other two, the student will get one message and it will list those 2 assignments. If they missed all 3, then they would see all 3 assignments. If they only missed one, they would see the one. So it is smart in terms of only sending one message if there's multiple due dates, multiple assignments on the same due date, if that makes sense. Somebody else has asked for me to review practice tests again. So let me go ahead and show that feature one more time so you know where your students can access it and how they can build a practice test. Now, of course, as an instructor, if you wanted to, you could always create a web test, label it a practice test, assign 0 weight to it. So maybe it's not added to the student's grade, but maybe make it a required prerequisite or just make it available as an optional feature. So you can make a practice test for a student if you want to, but what I'm showing today is the student's option to create their own practice test. Excuse me. So under web test, they would click practice test. I see here any practice tests I created previously. The student can then create a brand new practice test. And from here, they essentially just fill out this form. So I can name it. I think I haven't done a second practice test yet. They then choose which lessons they want to include. So, you know, hopefully this is something they would know already, what specific lessons would be covered in an upcoming exam. They choose how many questions they want included on that assessment. If they want to, they can make it untimed, or let's say they know they're only going to have 50 minutes for a test that you're assigning them, and they want to mimic that environment, they can set that time restriction and then click start. And then once they're in the practice test, so this is where I was saying this interface for the student practice test looks the same as that instructor practice test interface. So the student would go through and answer questions. In the top left-hand corner, they'll see what they've answered and what they haven't. They can easily hide what they've answered, so they just focus on what they still need to work on. And then I can always hide this time counter if it's stressing me out or giving me testing anxiety. And lastly, I submit the assignment. And this is where they have that review, where the review button will let them see each question, what they got right, what they got wrong. And on the wrong questions, they'll see explain error feedback and the solution. So those same resources we saw in practice. And then what I really like is this breakdown on a per lesson basis, because I really feel like this not only is a tool that helps students better understand where they should focus their study time, helps them understand what they might be struggling with. It also gives them the tools to study those areas, because if I see a particular lesson that I struggled with more than another lesson, I can actually click on that lesson and it opens up into a practice session. And here I've got my tutor, I've got explain error, I can work through all of this. And when I end practice, I can come back to this main page and continue reviewing. A couple other questions are coming through. Someone said, is Hawks going to develop a feature where instructors can set the exact time or hour for students to begin and access an assignment? I don't want them working the assignment during a lecture. That's a good question. So you absolutely can do that currently for any web test that you create. The tool, we call the tool web test, but technically web test is really any online quiz or test, or you could even call it, you know, practice assignment or homework. But if you create something through our web test builder, then you can have specific time periods for when students can work on it. For Certify, because we really do consider that more of the homework assignment, that's something where we don't currently block students out. Even if it's past the due date, we always let students work on the assignment. It's just up to you if they get credit or not due to the late penalty. So we are not able to do that. I mean, you could potentially change your the time by which the assignments are due to be due right before class if you're wanting them to do the assignments before class, but I know you probably want to cover things in class that students work on afterwards. There is a timestamp, so you can see when students have submitted their assignments. So it is something you could always consider reaching out to a student if you notice they turned it in during a lecture time. I'm guessing you're talking about online lectures. Or you could maybe tell students, listen, if you turn this in during one of my lectures, I'm just going to reset your grade, so you have to redo it. Another, let's see. develop a feature. I answered that one. Someone said, when I am in the middle of a Zoom meeting, how do I get these slides on my computer to share with students? Great question. So I love the idea of actually opening up the software and walking students through it. So you can do that as an instructor. If you are in Zoom, so if you're familiar with the share feature, you would just log into your student account, which now for those of you who've already created your Teach account, you just go to teach.hawkslearning.com, log in, click Student Dashboard, and then you could click the share screen option in Zoom, and you would be able to share the screen, work through some practice problems, really encourage students to get into the software. So I'm not using slides right now, I'm actually using the live software, if that's what you were asking. Next question is, if I want to have my students take a Zoom instructional meeting on this software, which I believe you mentioned that you offer, where would I send them? So good question. Yes, we are hosting live student trainings starting next week. I know our marketing team sent out a mass email that we encouraged you to forward to your students because it actually allows them to register. But I will make sure that we follow up with you after this webinar and email it to you directly, because I know sometimes mass emails can be spammed. And that way your students, you can pass it on to your students and they can sign up for any of these sessions. Next question is, my students won't actually be able to enroll in my Hawks class until the end of the month when our semester starts. Can they still join the student training occurring in the next couple of weeks, even if they're not actually enrolled into my course? Great question. Absolutely, they certainly can. I believe we're actually doing it over the next 3 weeks. So you could pass along the link for students to join before your class. We are not going to do any type of credential check. So a student can sign up for the webinar even if they're not currently enrolled in a class. But we should even be doing it the week of the 31st through that first week of September. So if you wanted to, you could also encourage them again the first week of your actual classes to have them join then as well. Okay, great questions. I think, oops, did we get one more coming through? Let me just take one more look and make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, one more. Can you give me the address to give students so they see how to access temporary access to the software or buy the software? Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and type the address up here. Just a quick note though, we do have a lot of schools who are doing syncing with their current LMS. So if you're doing single sign-on through Canvas, Blackboard, D2L, Moodle, then your students would actually just be able to log into the LMS, click on the Hawks button, and it automatically creates their account and automatically gives them temporary access for the 20 days. If you are not syncing with your LMS, then your students would simply go to learn.hawkslearning.com. Whoops, I'm logged in here a couple times. So they would go to learn.hawkslearning.com. This is all they actually have to type. When I click enter, that's when it adds in all that extra stuff, but learn.hawkslearning.com, then they click create an account at the bottom. They then will see if they have an access code, they can type it in. That would be purchased from a bookstore. If they want to purchase from our website, they click here. And then the third option is request temporary access. So that's how students would request that temporary access. As an instructor, for students to be able to request temporary access in your section, you do need to put in a start and an end date for your section. So that's when you log into your gradebook. It's tools, manage sections. You click on a section name, and if you have that semester start and end date in, then students will be able to request temporary access. And for a full normal length semester, it will be so over 60 days, they will get 20 days free access. And also, just so you guys know, if a student did just go to hawkslearning.com, they can also from here click student sign in, and that will also take them to that same page I just showed. Another question. So somebody said, can you please repeat the process for using Hawks with Smart Thinking Moodle? And I'm not familiar with the term Smart Thinking, so unless that's a different version of it, but just in terms of Moodle syncing. So to start, it would be something you would need to have had set up already. So before the semester starts, you would be in touch with your Hawks representative and also the Moodle LMS admin on your campus, since it does take a little bit of work just to get the single sign-on and syncing process all set up and structured for your class. But assuming you've already set up for single sign-on to be activated for your Moodle course, your students would simply log into Moodle or really in any LMS. Because you've set it up, there should be a button or a link to Hawks Learning. That's going to look a little different depending on what system you're using, but there's some sort of option for them to open up their Hawks Learning account, and that's literally all they have to do if you have the single sign-on set up. Clicking on that button will log the student directly into their dashboard. It automatically creates an account for them, and it automatically gives them the 20 days free access. So a lot of it's really just happening behind the scenes. Okay, so there's that. I can have your rep reach out to you as well, though, just in case you did have some additional questions about how to set that up in case it's not set up currently. All right, so as of now, just double checking one more time, I have answered all of the questions that have come in. Thank you so much for such an interactive session. I really do appreciate your time. If you think of anything else, you guys know, like I said, we are here for you. So give us a call, send us an email. We'll follow up afterwards as well. And we're happy to help in any way that we can. But I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and a successful start to the new semester. All right, take care.